A $5 bag of charcoal will kill every trace of mold in a room and keep it from ever coming back. Not by spraying anything, not by scrubbing anything. It sits in a dish, pulls the moisture out of the air, and the mold starves to death. Because mold without moisture is like a fire without oxygen. It does not slowly fade, it simply cannot exist. The Japanese have known this for 400 years. They have been placing charcoal in closets, under sinks, behind walls, and inside cabinets since before electricity reached most of the world. And the reason you have never heard of it has nothing to do with whether it works. It has everything to do with the fact that a $5 solution you recharge in sunlight cannot sustain a billion-dollar mold remediation industry. I need to tell you this right now, because if you are looking at black patches on your walls, on the wood behind your closet, creeping across the ceiling in a room that always feels damp, you have probably already tried to fix it. You sprayed bleach on it. The black disappeared for a week, maybe 10 days. Then it came back. Same wall, same corner, sometimes darker than before. So you sprayed again, scrubbed harder, bought a stronger product. Maybe you called somebody. A man came, treated the surfaces, installed a fan, handed you a bill that made your eyes water, and drove away. 6 weeks later, the mold was back, and at some point quietly you stopped fighting it. You accepted it the way people accept a slow drain or a squeaky hinge, just part of the house. Here is what nobody in that cycle ever told you. Every product you used, every service you paid for, was treating the surface. Not one of them touched the reason the mold was there. Bleach is an oxidizer. It strips the dark pigment off mold colonies and makes the wall look white again. That is cosmetic. Underneath the surface, the mold has sent root structures called hyphae deep into the material, threads so fine you cannot see them, anchored into the paint, the plaster, the wood itself. Bleach does not reach those roots. It does not have the chemical profile to penetrate the biofilm the colony builds around itself like armor. So the roots survive, the humidity stays, and within 2 weeks, the colony regenerates from the same spot, as if nothing happened. You were never failing. The chemistry was wrong, and every product on the shelf was designed around the same wrong chemistry, because a product that fixes the problem permanently cannot generate repeat sales. A spray you need to buy again every month can. My wife Yuki would not describe what she does as a system. She would find that word too large for something so small. But what she has done for our entire marriage, and what her mother did before her, and what her grandmother did in a farmhouse outside Wakayama that stood for over 100 years without a dark spot on a single beam, is a system. It begins with charcoal, not the briquettes you buy for a barbecue. Those are pressed with binders and fillers and shaped in a factory. They do not have the internal structure that makes this work. What Yuki uses is binchotan, a charcoal made from ubame oak in the Kishu region of Wakayama Prefecture. It has been produced there since the Edo period, over 400 years, by families who have passed the craft down through generations in the same mountain kilns their great-grandparents built. The process takes roughly 10 days. The artisans fire the wood slowly, raising the temperature in stages above 1,000 degrees, then pull the glowing charcoal from the kiln and cool it rapidly with a mixture of sand and ash. The result is a dense, almost metallic charcoal with a carbon purity near 95%. Tap 2 pieces together and they ring like ceramic. But the remarkable thing about binchotan is not what it looks like. It is what is happening inside it at a scale too small for your eyes. A single gram of this charcoal, a piece smaller than a pebble, contains millions of microscopic pores. If you could unfold all the internal surfaces of those pores and lay them flat, 1 gram would cover an area larger than a tennis court. Some estimates put it above 3,000 square meters. That vast internal labyrinth is what pulls moisture out of the air. The process is called adsorption, which is different from absorption. A sponge absorbs. It soaks water into its body. Charcoal adsorbs. Moisture molecules cling to its enormous internal surface the way dew clings to a cold window pane. The charcoal does not get wet, it simply collects moisture on those millions of interior surfaces and holds it there, quietly pulling humidity down, degree by degree, until the air around it drops below the threshold mold needs to germinate. That threshold is 60% relative humidity. Above 60%, mold spores can establish a colony in as little as 24 to 48 hours. Below 60%, the spores are still in the air. They are always in the air, in every room you have ever been in, but they cannot take root. They land on the wall and fail. They need moisture the way a seed needs water. Remove the water and the seed just sits there, harmless, indefinitely. And the charcoal catches something else most people do not realize is in the air. Mold colonies release compounds called mycotoxins and volatile organic compounds as part of their normal life cycle. These are the invisible particles that create the musty smell you associate with damp rooms, and over time, they are what cause the headaches, the sinus irritation, the allergic reactions, the respiratory problems that people who live with mold learn to accept as a feature of their house rather than a problem with a solution. The charcoal adsorbs those compounds on the same internal surfaces where it traps moisture. The air gets drier, it also gets cleaner, and the room becomes a place where mold spores land and cannot germinate, and where the toxic traces of old colonies stop circulating through the air your family breathes every night while they sleep. This is why charcoal kills mold permanently when sprays and scrubbing cannot. Every chemical product on the shelf attacks the organism and leaves the conditions untouched. The charcoal changes the conditions. It makes the room itself hostile to mold at the molecular level. Drier air, cleaner air, a surface chemistry that spores cannot colonize. That is not a temporary fix. That is the environment telling the mold it is not welcome. And the mold listens because it has no choice. Now, there is one thing I want to say clearly because it will save you frustration. Charcoal works on the moisture in the air, the humidity that builds up from breathing, from cooking, from showers, from a house that does not ventilate well enough. That is the moisture responsible for 90% of the mold problems people deal with. The slow, invisible dampness that turns a clean wall into a colony over the course of a season. For that kind of moisture, charcoal is devastating. But if you have a pipe leaking behind the wall, or a roof that lets rain in, or a crack in the foundation letting groundwater seep up, that is a different problem. That is structural water, and it needs to be fixed at the source before charcoal or anything else can keep the room dry. Fix the leak first, then place the charcoal. In that order, the mold stays gone permanently. And I need to say this plainly, because I see the confusion everywhere. Regular charcoal briquettes will not work. If you put barbecue charcoal under your sink, you will have a dish of black lumps doing nothing. The material you need is activated charcoal, sometimes called aquarium charcoal, sold in the pet section of any hardware store for $5 to $8 a bag, or binchotan sticks from a Japanese goods supplier, $10 to $15. Both have the pore structure that does the work. Briquettes do not. Last spring, Yuki sent me to the hardware store for a replacement filter for our air purifier. The cartridge cost $32. I stood in the aisle and read the label because I am the kind of man who reads labels, and the primary filtering medium listed on the packaging was activated charcoal. The same material, the same porous carbon doing the same adsorption, sealed in a plastic housing with a brand name on it and sold for $32 every 3 months, $128 a year. For a substance I can buy in a $5 bag, set in a ceramic dish, and recharge in sunlight for free. I am not complaining about the company. The filter works. The engineering is real. I am simply observing that the fundamental material inside that cartridge has been sitting on a different shelf in the same store unbranded and unnoticed for decades. Nobody runs a commercial for a mesh bag of aquarium charcoal. Nobody can build a subscription model around a material you recharge in sunlight and replace once a year. So the knowledge sits there, quiet, the same way it sat in Japanese households for 4 centuries before anyone outside Japan thought to ask about it. But charcoal alone is not enough. My mother would have told you that. She never used charcoal by itself. She used it alongside something older and simpler, which is moving air. Every morning, before anything else, she opened windows on opposite sides of the house. Not all of them. 2 or 3, on facing walls, for about 10 minutes, even in winter. The Japanese call this kuki nuki, which translates roughly as air renewal. The principle is elementary. During the night, moisture accumulates from breathing, from skin, from the natural humidity of bodies in an enclosed space. If that moisture is not flushed out by morning, it settles into walls, into fabrics, into the wooden frame of the house. It becomes the first deposit in a slow account that mold will eventually draw from. 10 minutes of cross-ventilation empties the account. Fresh air moving through the house picks up moisture as it passes and carries it outside. The house starts the day dry. It costs nothing. It requires no equipment. And it is the habit that makes the charcoal work twice as hard, because the charcoal is not fighting the entire night's moisture alone. Yuki does the same thing. She also does something after that most people would not think of as related to mold at all. She wipes surfaces, not all of them, the ones that collect moisture, the bathroom mirror after she uses it, the kitchen sink before she goes to sleep, the shower glass after the last shower of the day, with a small rubber squeegee that costs $2 and hangs on a hook inside the stall. None of these actions takes more than 30 seconds, none of them feels like cleaning, but together, across a day, they eliminate the standing moisture that would otherwise sit on surfaces all night, feeding humidity into the room, creating exactly the conditions mold waits for. This is what the Japanese call suji applied to moisture. Not cleaning as an event, cleaning as breathing, something so small and so constant that the problem never accumulates to the point where you need to fight it. There is a fourth piece, and it is the one most Western homes work against without knowing it. The materials in a traditional Japanese house were chosen centuries before anyone understood the science. Wood, clay, tatami, washi paper. Every one of these materials pulls humidity out of the air when conditions are damp and releases it slowly when conditions dry, acting as a natural buffer that keeps indoor humidity remarkably stable. A modern Western home does the opposite. Sealed paint on every wall, plastic vapor barriers behind the drywall, synthetic carpet on the floors, vinyl in the kitchen. These materials do not breathe. They trap moisture against surfaces. They create pockets of still, damp air in corners and behind furniture where nothing moves and nothing dries. I am not suggesting you tear your house apart. I am suggesting you notice. When we first moved into our current home, there was a large wooden bookshelf pushed flat against the bedroom wall with no gap behind it. Within a year, Yuki pulled it forward to dust and found a faint shadow of mold on the plaster behind it. Not black yet, gray. Just starting. The air between the shelf and the wall had been sitting still for 12 months with nowhere to go, and that was enough. She moved the shelf 6 inches from the wall. She cleaned the plaster with a cloth dampened with vinegar. She placed a small dish of charcoal on the bottom shelf nearest the wall. The mold never came back. 6 inches of air. That is what it took. You can do the same with any piece of furniture that sits flush against an exterior wall. Replace a sealed plastic storage bin in the closet with a wooden crate or a cotton bag that lets air pass through. Crack a window in a room that has felt stuffy for months and let it breathe for 10 minutes a day. These are small choices, but they are the kind of choices that, compounded across months and years, determine whether your walls grow mold or do not. Here's what to do this week. Go to a pet store, a garden center, or order online. Buy a bag of activated charcoal granules, not briquettes. Look for the words activated or aquarium grade. $5 to $8. Take 4 or 5 small breathable containers. Ceramic dishes, mesh sachets, small baskets lined with cloth, anything that lets air reach the charcoal while keeping the granules contained. Fill each one with a layer of granules about an inch deep. Place them in the spots where moisture concentrates, inside the closet where clothes smell damp, the corner behind furniture where the wall stays cold, under the sink in the kitchen or bathroom, the shelf above the washing machine, the room where the windows fog up in winter. Leave them. Within a week, the air will feel different, drier, lighter. The musty smell, if there was one, will start to fade. Every 6 weeks, take the charcoal outside on a sunny afternoon and spread it on a tray in direct sunlight for 3 to 5 hours. The heat and UV drive off the trapped moisture and regenerate the pore surfaces. Bring it back inside and return it to its positions. That is the entire maintenance. 6 weeks of silent work, 1 afternoon of sun, and the charcoal resets for another cycle. The total cost for a year of this is somewhere between $5 and $15, depending on whether you use aquarium charcoal or binchotan. Compare that to the average American household, which spends well over $100 a year on mold sprays, dehumidifier electricity, and replacement filters for air purifiers. And that $100 manages the problem without solving it. The charcoal solves it for the price of a sandwich. After about a year, even recharging stops fully restoring it. When that happens, crush it and work it into your garden soil. It aerates the earth, improves drainage, feeds the microorganisms that help your plants grow. Nothing is wasted. The charcoal that kept your walls dry for a year becomes the soil that grows your food. My mother would have liked that very much. If you have stayed with me this far, you are the kind of person this was written for. Every method I teach on this channel and the ones I have not shown yet, I have written them all down in a book. The link is just below this video. If you want it, it is there. There is a man I used to work with, a good man, who bought a condominium 5 years ago on the 4th floor of a building with sealed windows and a ventilation system that recycled the same air through every unit. By the second summer, he had mold on the bedroom wall. By the third, it had spread to the closet. His clothes smelled damp even after washing. He bought a dehumidifier, then a second one. Then he paid a remediation company more than $1,000. The mold came back within 2 months. The last time we spoke about it, he said something I have thought about many times since. He said, "I think this is just what happens in buildings like this." He had accepted it. The way you accept a bad knee or a slow commute, just part of life. It is not part of life, it is part of a home that cannot breathe. And the answer is not a bigger machine or a stronger chemical. The answer is what the charcoal makers in Wakayama have been firing in their kilns since the year 1600. What my mother kept in a ceramic dish on a shelf she dusted every Sunday. What Yuki places in 5 quiet corners of our home and recharges in the sun like it is the most ordinary thing in the world, because to her, it is. You do not fight moisture, you give it nowhere to stay. And a home where moisture has nowhere to stay is a home where mold has nowhere to begin. Tell me in the comments where the dampest spot in your house is. I am curious whether it is a wall, a closet, a basement, or somewhere you would not expect. And tell me if you try the charcoal. I would like to hear what you notice after the first week. There is something else Yuki does that I have been meaning to tell you about. She keeps a single glass bottle of white vinegar under the kitchen sink, and she uses it on nearly every surface in our home. But there is one material she will not let it touch, And the reason goes back to a mistake she made in the first year of our marriage that cost us a countertop and taught both of us something I have never forgotten. I will tell you about that next time. The house that breathes does not grow mold, and the life that stays in motion does not grow stale. Both of those things are true, and neither of them costs very much to practice.